Hello, everyone. Good evening. So, I'm Heshanka Janani, and first of all, I would like to thank our beloved lecturer, Dr. Hans Savrimuttu, Senior Lecturer, Department of Languages and Communication Studies, Faculty of Communication and Business Studies, Trincomalee Campus, for providing this opportunity to me. So, today my topic is Henry David Thoreau's Civil Disobedience. So, under this topic, I'm going to talk about uh, Krish, next slide, please. The background of the Thoreau and what is civil disobedience and what are the historical contexts that influence to write the civil disobedience and the importance of the essay, main argument, duty of civil disobedience and influencers of Thoreau's and how this civil disobedience connect with Sri Lankan context and finally conclusion. So, who is this Thoreau? If a plant cannot live according to its nature, it dies, and so a man. So, plants need to adhere to its natural conditions and requirements to survive. And also a human also need to live in accordance with their true principles and values and beliefs. So this is Henry David Thoreau's. The statement was taken from the Henry David Thoreau's Civil Disobedience. So Henry David Thoreau was an American writer, philosopher, naturalist, and transcendentalist known for his contribution to literature and social thought. So he was born in 1870 in July 12 in Concord, and he was a third child of four children, and he had attended Harvard College, and he graduated in 1837, and his studies about classic philosophy and science. So um, he was a central figure in the transcendentalist movement. So this transcendentalists emphasize uh, that the inherent goodness of people and nature, the value of individual intuition and conscience, and the potential for human spiritual growth. So, Krish, next slide. So, Thoreau's most famous work is Walden. It is a reflection on simple living in natural surrounding. So, it was a reflection on simple living. It is based on his experiment with living in 2 years in a cabin built near the Walden Pond in Concord. So, these books explore the themes of self-sufficiency and simplicity and benefits of a close connection to the nature. So this statement will provide how much he admire the environment. I went to the woods because I wish to live deliberately to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. So Thoreau was speaking out against the slavery and supporting the Underground Railroad. So he was known for his independent, keen observation and reflective nature. And as a naturalist, his detailed observation of nature laid the groundwork for later environmentalist thought, and his work has had a profound impact on social and political environments throughout the history. And he advocated for the primacy of personal conscience over societal laws. So, next slide. But now let's see, what is the civil disobedience? Actually, it is an influential essay. It is written on 1849. It is argues for the necessity and the rightness of resisting government policies and laws that are morally unjust. So he mentioned that individuals have duty to avoid being complicit in injustice under this so that he premises, the central premises is that in the civil disobedience is the individual should not permit governments to overlay or over control or atrophy their conscience. Now let's see about the historical context of the civil disobedience. Krish, can you? Yeah. The historical context of the civil disobedience is rooted in the social, political, economic conditions of the United States in the mid-19th century. So the Mexican-American War, slavery and abolitionism, transcendentalism, political environment, Thoreau's personal circumstance are influence him to write the civil disobedience. So under the Mexican-American War, actually, it was a conflict between the United States and Mexico, primarily over the annexation of taxes and territory disputes. And the US aimed to expand its territory across North America, often at the expense of other nations and indigenous people. Actually, uh, among with the Thoreau, the many Americans view the war as an unjust act of aggressions and a means to expand slavery and into new territories. So Thoreau's opposition to the war was a major factor in his refusal to pay the poll tax that support to the Mexican-American War. It leads to his arrestment, his imprisonment uh, and it is inspiring for him to write civil disobedience. So actually, this is a key event to leads him to write this essay. So next is slavery and abolitionism. So slavery was a deeply entrenched institution in the southern United States, and the national debate over its morality and legality was intense. And Thoreau was part of the grounding abolitionist movement that saw to the end of slavery. So he believed that paying taxes to the government that supported slavery made him complicit in his perpetuation. Now let's see transcendentalism. So what is the transcendentalism? It was a political and social movement that emerged in the 1830s and 1840s. So it emphasized I mentioned about inherent goodness of the people and the nature and individual intuition, and the rejection of the societal convention. So Ralph Waldo Emerson, Margaret Fuller, and Bronson Alcott, they are the key figures of the transcendentalist movement. So Thoreau was closely connected. He was thoroughly influenced by them and they shared their beliefs. So the transcendentalists emphasized on individual conscience and moral responsibility strongly influenced Thoreau's these views on civil disobedience and his willingness to act of his principles. So now let's talk about what are the political environment and Thoreau's personal circumstances that influenced to write this essay. So the political system in the US was characterized by a democratic government, but it was also marked by significant inequalities and injustices, particularly regarding the race and class. So Thoreau was critical of the democratic process when it upheld unjust laws and policies. So he believed that morality should not be subject to majority rule and that individual had a duty to oppose immoral action by the government. And I mentioned about he was living in the Concord. He was living in the Walden Pond near Concord. Actually, it is a hub of intellectual and social reform activity. So with that, living in that area, he was connect with the many leading thinkers, and actually, it was influenced him to write this civil disobedience, and it was and the 2 years experiment of living the Walden Pond was a personal quest for simplicity and self-sufficiency. So aligning with these transcendentalist beliefs and providing a practical foundation for his philosophical ideas. Now let's see about what is the main argument in this essay. So the main argument in this essay is that individual should not individual should individual should not uh, individual should prioritize their personal conscience over the dictates of laws and government policies, especially when those laws are those laws and policies aren't. So he believed that people have a fundamental responsibility to according to their sense of right and wrong. And Thoreau said the individual must follow their own moral compass even if conflict with the law. And he critiqued the government, believing it is the potential source of corruption and injustice. We know as the government, they should provide the citizen for their citizens to the well-being, and they should take care of their citizens' necessity things and all the things. But many of the government, many of the countries, along with the Asian countries, so the government, they only think, the governors, they only think about their well-being, how to get more profit for their well-being, not for the citizens. So that thing effect for the corruption of the country. So Thoreau critiques that government policies, that kind of government policies. And the famous list is, there is a statement on that essay, the government is best which governs least, suggesting that minimal government intervention allows for the greater individual freedom and moral action. The minimum government in intervention. But as you can see, most of the countries, most of the government, there is no minimal intervention. There are maximum intervention of governors. That's why most of the countries are still developing. They are not developed. They are still developing. We don't know whether what is the exact date that countries become developed country because of these kind of governors. So he critiques the government. He argues that governments are often more harmful than helpful, as they lend to serve the interest to the powerful rather than the common good. So government should be helpful rather than harmful, but most of the government, they are harmful rather than the helpful. So they are harm their citizens with the many of taxes, with the many of economic crises. They are harmed. They harm their citizens, not the help. So next slide, Krish, please. So Thoreau introduced the concept of civil disobedience, which is international and non-violent violation of laws to protect the bring attention to the injustice. So his resistance should be non-violent and rooted in higher moral law. So he emphasizes the complying with unjust laws that makes individual complicit in perpetuation of injustice. So he argues that civil disobedience is not only right. Actually, it is not only a right, it is a moral imperative. It is a moral responsibility when faced with the laws that violate ethical principles. So he believes that justice and morality are not determined by the majority, but by adherence to higher ethical standard. So Thoreau himself practiced the civil disobedience. I mentioned about he refused into the pay the poll tax to avoid the Mexican-American War, supported the Mexican-American War and slavery. So it is also leading to his brief imprisonment. So he is practically practiced the civil disobedience himself. So Thoreau envisioned a society where individuals act based on conscience rather than blind obedience to the law. If we follow the blindly laws of the government, whether if we found it is correct or wrong, we have to suffer. We have to suffer for our consequences that which our choices that we are get from earlier. Advocate guided more important. So argues often expend it rather than just, and it is responsible of individual to oppose such policies. So now let's talk about what is the duty of the civil disobedience. Actually, it is the main theme of this essay. Krish? Yeah. So it is the main theme of this essay, the duty of the civil disobedience. So Thoreau believes that individuals should not blindly follow law, as I mentioned about, and government directives, especially when these are unjust, these laws are unjust. So he argues that it is a moral duty to impose oppose injustice, stating that there is another statement. It is not desirable to cultivate a respect for the law so much as for the right. So according to the Thoreau, conscience should guide the action, not the legal obligation. So he emphasized the importance of individual conscience over societal norms of government laws. So he argues that each person must act according to their sense of knowledge, according to their sense of right and wrong. If it is conflict with the law, if we know that if I against with the law, it is a conflict. If it is a conflict with the law, it is if I I am against with the government, but it is the right decision that we have to get that in the particular moment. We have to get that choice. We have to get that selection to the according to that environment. So he believes that peaceful disobedience is a powerful tool, it's a powerful way, an effective way to challenge and bring attention to the injustice. So now let's see who are the influencers of Thoreau. So it is emphasized on nonviolent resistance influenced later leaders and movements, most notably Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. So both men cited the civil disobedience as the inspiration for their own struggles against colonialism and racial segregation, respectively. So Gandhi, let's talk about the Gandhi. So Gandhi first read the Thoreau's Civil Disobedience while he was in South Africa as a lawyer, where he was actively involved in civil rights struggle for the Indian community. Krish, next slide. And he led the Indian independence movement against British colonial rule, employing strategies of nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience. We know they were created and they were made so many campaigns against to the British colony. So Gandhi believed in resisting the tyranny through nonviolence. Most of famous examples are Satyagraha campaign and Gandhi's Salt March. They are the example for these civil disobedience. Actually, this Soul March is in 1930, the act of civil disobedience that drew directly from the Thoreau's principle. It was a protest. Actually, Soul March was a protest that against the British monopoly of the salt, where Gandhi and his followers marched 240 miles into the Arabian Sea to make their own salt defiance of British law. So when we talk about Martin Luther King, actually, he was an American leader and American civil rights movement and fighting against racial segregation and discrimination through nonviolent protest. And Martin Luther King, read the civil disobedience. He was a theology student at Boston University. The essay's message of individual moral responsibility and the power of nonviolent resistance made a lasting impression on him. So there are some key events. So the main key event is the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 to 1956. So it is a Montgomery bus boycott was American refused to ride the buses for protest segregated seating. So this became the cornerstone of King's philosophy and the broader civil rights movements. So now let's talk about how this civil disobedience connect with Sri Lankan context. So, similar to the Indian independence movement led by Mahatma Gandhi, Sri Lanka also experienced significant and anti-colonial activism. So we know in our country there were three countries lead our country. One is Portuguese, and then Dutch, and then British. So Portuguese came 1505 to 1658, and then Dutch 1658 to 1796, and then British 1796 to 1948. So the fight against British colonialism rule involved various forms of civil disobedience, including protests, strikes, and non-cooperation with colonial authorities. So Sri Lankan leaders like D.S. Janani, and he was the first former prime minister of Sri Lanka after the country became independence, and like other freedom fighters who adopted non-violent methods to assert their demands for the independence. And in the post-independence era, civil disobedience has been a tool for various political and social movements. So, for example, labor strikes and the student protest have often involved acts of civil disobedience, such as boycotts and sitting the exams, demand fair wages, and better working condition and educational reform. Actually, currently we are experiencing that kind of civil disobedience. So I think you know about that. So environmental, next previous slide, Krish. So environmental activism in Sri Lanka has also involved civil disobedience. So we know activists protesting against deforestation and the pollution and large-scale development projects that threaten to the nature. They have used non-violent resistance to draw attention to their causes. So now I think you may get an idea about what is this civil disobedience and how it connect with the Sri Lankan context. So now finally, I am going to deal with the conclusion. So this civil disobedience is a powerful and influential essay. It is a powerful text, and it continues to inspire those who seek to challenge injustice and advocate for a more just ethical society. And Thoreau advocacy for nonviolent resistance is a powerful tool than the violent. So it is a timeless call action. Actually, we can apply it. We can in past we applied civil disobedience. In current we are applying, and future we will apply the civil disobedience for any situation like this, the government mismanagement. So it is that is why it is called like timeless call to action. So as an individual, everyone has a right to stand against the injustice of the government. That is the moral duty. It is the moral responsibility as a citizen. So thank you very much.